What is going on, everybody? My name is Gianni, and today we're talking Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Alright, I'm gonna be honest, I think I'm entering a new era in 2025. Between my backlog and new releases in Metroid Dread, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, and Crypt Custodian, I think I'm officially developing a newfound love for games of the same style, so it couldn't have been better timing that Shinobi is returning with Art of Vengeance from developer Lizardcube after a nearly 15-year hiatus. And while my overall experience felt like a slow burn before it really hit its stride, Shinobi brings some serious heat with snappy combo-based action, gorgeously rendered environments, and a fun campaign that takes some time to ramp up, but fully delivers in the end. Art of Vengeance kicks things off by reintroducing series mainstay Joe Musashi and his partner Naoko on the precipice of welcoming their newborn son. When a mysterious military organization known as ENE Corp, led by its ruthless leader Lord Ruse, begins wreaking havoc across Japan, Musashi steps up yet again to stop the impending threat of Ruse's plot for global domination. Now, it's here that I want to mention that this initial premise did not get its hooks in me off the bat. It felt like pretty standard ninja media fare. And to be honest, this is going to be a theme that will run throughout my conversation about Art of Vengeance. However, I want to make this clear, that's not necessarily to its detriment. In the interest of avoiding spoilers, there's a point just around hour 3 where things take a really interesting turn, and it felt like one of those, okay, hold on, they're doing something special here kind of moments. The story setup at a base level seems kind of rudimentary, but as it starts to simmer and marinate, Lizardcube goes to some really fun and unexpected places that by the end had me itching for more context in the best way possible. While I may have preferred a faster onboarding to the true nature of the game's plot, they eventually got there, and I think there's a fascinating story being told through and through. I also want to point out that with the use of completely static images, Lizardcube was able to do a great job with their voiceover and acting direction for every character outside of our protagonist a few words. So while Joe's entire script is relegated to grunts as an ongoing bit, the remainder of the cast have an awesome anime-infused level of inflection and exaggeration that fit the vibes perfectly. And setting the tone for this over-the-top storyline is some of the prettiest 2D animation I've ever seen in a game like this. Shinobi places Joe Musashi in all sorts of environments that see him trekking across the entirety of Japan, from the windswept fields of the Oboro clan village to the industrial backdrop of ENE Corp's R&D operations. Art of Vengeance features some of the most stunning art direction of its competitors, and you'd be hard-pressed to find another game as overwhelmingly good to look at as this. There were times throughout my playthrough that left me in awe as I ran from space to space, soaking in the jaw-dropping skyboxes of an upcoming lantern festival or the sun-soaked dunes of a secret desert oasis. Everything has a beautifully rendered, hand-painted feel about it, even down to the character models and enemy movements. It's as if the pages of a boldly illustrated graphic novel came to life. Cutscenes play out like art slideshows, and even character interactions are a joy to experience just for the sake of admiring the work that went into creating the images. There's also this really subtle camera system that pulls toward and away from Joe as he traverses different landscapes that can instantly turn an encounter into something more cinematic or intimate. The level of artistic detail involved in every aspect of this game left me excited to find out what was around the next corner. And even if Art of Vengeance was a dud to play, it still would have been damn fine to look at. I do want to point out that despite the beauty in its hand-drawn art style, I did encounter multiple bizarre visual bugs and a couple hard crashes throughout my time with the game. One instance saw the bottom of my map fully dropping out of sight, and another where the entire lighting system went completely bananas, forcing me to close the game entirely. While I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to weird technical issues of that sort, I know some aren't, so I thought it might be important to mention. Now that said, moving through these incredibly rendered maps is probably Shinobi's biggest selling point, as combat and traversal feel smooth, responsive, and satisfying, with one caveat. During my 14-hour playthrough, I found that the game's overall feeling and its movement start out on the opposite side of the spectrum. When I first took control of Joe, the floaty feeling of jumping and dodging was kind of off-putting. There was this odd sense of weightlessness that I just couldn't wrap my head around, and this also extended to the combat. I was constantly over and underestimating spatial distances, aerial attacks, and platform puzzles. This might have just been a me problem, but it wasn't the tone setter I wanted from a brand new action platformer. However, once again, around hour 3 or 4 with a handful of new traversal and combat features unlocked, the game hits its stride and hits it hard. Shinobi shines in its combo mechanics, so once I had the ability to string multiple attacks together or have more aerial control of Joe midair, I felt like the game started to sing. Pairing up Nimpo attacks, kunai throws, wall climbs, obstacle vaulting, ultimate techniques, dodge rolls, parachute drops, air cancels, guard breaks, dive bombs, power thrusts, parries, and executions all turn the game from a bare-bones side-scroller into a fully fleshed out and complex experience. That experience just didn't feel nearly as obvious in the opening hours as it does when it starts to pick up its real momentum. So I feel a little deja vu here, but just like the plot, the onboarding chugs just a little bit, but once it's going, it's going. Finding that flow state mid-battle after attempting a combat sequence a couple times only to pull it off with little to no damage and a pocket full of bonus cash is so satisfying, and it's definitely the kind of gameplay I'll be thinking about all year. Filling out these encounters will be dozens of different enemy types that gain little variables as the game progresses, from additional armor to bigger areas of effect. I want to say about 75% of the way through my playthrough I had encountered every enemy type the game had to offer, but Lizardcube throws in several bonus encounters and elite battles to switch things up and make them feel fresh, and that feeling extends to the bosses as well. Boss battles all feel varied with multiple different mechanics and phases, and while some are painfully punishing in comparison to others, there was never a point where I felt like the game bordered on unfair. That being said, Shinobi isn't easy, and there will be bosses and challenge rooms that will test you, but everything feels manageable with the right amount of concentration and strategy. When you're not taking on the E&E Corp militia with your trusty katana, you'll be exploring one of several Metroidvania light levels as you solve puzzles, search for loot, or conquer bonus sections. Now I describe it this way because Shinobi has an interesting mission structure where levels are mostly straightforward paths from A to Z, with clearly marked sections on the map that indicate there's an optional collectible and a nearby offshoot. The Metroidvania aspect comes into play in the way you earn new techniques and perks throughout the story, so in Mission 1 you may encounter an unbreakable wall that you have no method to pass through. But later in the campaign you may have earned that ability, so at any point in the game you can just travel back to that level and progress to that point with your fast travel system, and then proceed through the obstacle. It's a good way to let the campaign go to several different locales and environments while maintaining that sense of broad puzzle solving and exploration that spans your entire experience, despite the isolated mission structure. I did have a few qualms with some really wild changes in structure during a couple late game missions, but outside of that, every level felt varied, and even the ever-present lever switch puzzles and their solutions changed pretty frequently. Rounding out the game are a handful of extra modes to keep things exciting. For one, you have the training grounds, which is this kind of hyperbolic time chamber-like arena where you can hash out your combos on a test dummy, and it's a fun way to practice your moves in a zero-stakes environment. Next, there's the boss rush mode, set in that same arena that lets you take on each of the game's bosses with no rest in between, all while collecting big bucks to spend on new Nimpo attacks, combo abilities, passive buffs, and even costumes for Joe. Last is arcade mode, a spin on the game's main campaign that lets you run through each of Shinobi's main missions to achieve the highest rank possible, along with the bragging rights to show for it. Shinobi Art of Vengeance is a beautifully realized adaptation of the franchise's retro roots that brings the fun of its originator's puzzle platforming into 2025. While the overall ramp into its momentum feels much more drawn out than I would have liked, once the experience gets its flow, then it's all gas, no brakes till the credits roll. Lizardcube is truly carving out a lane of their own with their recent run of retro revivals, and I'll be seated when they inevitably take on another franchise from my childhood. So, what are your thoughts on Shinobi Art of Vengeance? I'd love to know in the comments below, and remember, you can find me here on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Threads, anywhere you're at, I'm there too. So be sure to give me a follow or a sub to keep up with everything that I'm working on, and we'll see you on the next one.